Hello.
What if Obi Wan captured Anakin on Mustafar? That's our story for today, one that I really enjoyed writing, and let's get right into it. Our story begins on Mustafar, as Anakin Skywalker and Obi Wan Kenobi are dueling in a battle over the fate of the entire galaxy. Anakin was fighting to become the true Sith Lord in the galaxy, ruling over every planet, with Padme and their children by his side. In his mind, the Jedi were evil, corrupt, and trying to take the galaxy for themselves. He had to win. And Obi Wan Kenobi fought for the entire Jedi Order, or at least the memory of the Jedi Order, but he also fought for peace, for democracy. Just days ago, the two of them were as close as brothers, though it was no secret their relationship had been deteriorating over recent weeks and months, until now it has reached the breaking point of light versus dark. Anakin was fiercely determined to not only defeat Obi-Wan, but to kill him here today. Obi-Wan was also assigned to kill Anakin, but a small part of him that he simply could not let go was tugging at Obi-Wan more and more as he fought Anakin. Obi-Wan had convinced himself that Anakin was not completely lost yet. Yoda told Obi-Wan that the Sith must be destroyed, but Obi-Wan had a secret that he kept from everyone. From Anakin, from the Council, everyone. His greatest secret was that he formed a genuine attachment to Anakin, and killing him would be nearly impossible. So before Obi-Wan left, he grabbed handcuffs and a syringe from Coruscant, a syringe of a sedative drug. He would bring Anakin in alive. The two of them fought now inside the control room, slashing through the panels as alarms began to sound through the facility. The door opened, and Anakin jumped after Obi-Wan, clashing their blades together, until Anakin kicked Obi-Wan hard in the face. The Jedi Master stumbled backwards, regaining his composure to block a new attack from Anakin, and Obi-Wan then jumped to a thin pipe, barely balancing on it, baiting Anakin to follow him. And of course, Anakin did follow. So Obi-Wan sliced through the pipe as Anakin landed, and Anakin lost his footing, slipping down now to a new level. Obi-Wan used a heavy force push, so Anakin slammed hard on his back onto the platform, feeling dazed and unable to breathe for a moment. Obi-Wan seized this moment, jumping down and pulling out the handcuffs to quickly slip them on Anakin. Anakin tried to retaliate, but Obi-Wan now grabbed his neck, plunging the sedative syringe right into him. Anakin stumbled backwards, his eyes turning yellow as he stared at Obi-Wan, feeling defeated. He tried using the dark side to overcome the drugs in his system. He kicked at Obi-Wan, only to miss and fall back down, now going completely unconscious. Obi-Wan was breathing heavily as he looked to his defeated student. Once again, his need for victory, to prove himself, was his undoing. He sadly picked Anakin up, then jumped up back to the facility, making his way through until he got back to Padme's ship with Anakin in his arms. Obi-Wan set him down on one bed, and he noticed that C-3PO and R2-D2 already loaded Padme onto the other bed. R2 let out a sad chirp as Obi-Wan set Anakin down, and Obi-Wan assured him it will be alright. Someday Anakin will come back to them. And Obi-Wan wasn't sure if he was trying to convince the droid or convince himself. But either way, he knew what his next stop had to be. Anakin would wake up eventually, and when he does, he will be beyond angry. Obi-Wan knew of only one thing that would be able to hold him, the Mandalorian vault that Ahsoka was keeping Maul in. Before leaving Coruscant, Obi-Wan also checked the last known location of the Republic Venator that Ahsoka was in, finding out that it crashed on a barren moon halfway between Coruscant and Mandalore. So Obi-Wan flew away, first contacting Bail Organa and having him meet him above Polis Massa, so Obi-Wan could hand Padme off to Bail. Obi-Wan chose to do this above the planet, as he went against Yoda's orders to kill Anakin. He would make sure Anakin was very secure in the vault before telling Yoda all of this. Bail took Padme and the droids down to the medical facility, as Obi-Wan stayed in the ship, jumping for the last known coordinates of Ahsoka's Venator, with Anakin still unconscious in the back of the ship. And as Obi-Wan flew through hyperspace, he kept fearing that Anakin would wake up, but he never did. Obi-Wan wondered what it would be like if he did wake up. He remembered all the times the two of them sat in a cockpit through hyperspace, laughing, arguing, strategizing, enjoying each other's company. And Obi-Wan wondered where it all went wrong as he looked back at his fallen students. On the barren moon, Ahsoka Tano just finished putting as many helmets as she could on stakes in front of the crashed Venator. She wanted to honor the clones. Her and Rex were here for so long, and she was finally preparing to leave, as they both noticed a new ship emerge from hyperspace. Ahsoka ran and grabbed her lightsabers from the ground as Rex prepped his blasters to fire. The Naboo ship landed in front of them, and from the ramp came Obi Wan Kenobi. Obi Wan didn't expect anyone to be here still, but he ignited his lightsaber in front of Rex, telling Ahsoka not to trust him. Rex quickly dropped his blasters, as Ahsoka told Obi-Wan about Order 66. The clones did not choose to do this, it was forced upon them. Obi-Wan hesitantly put his lightsaber away, but every time he looked to Rex's armor, all he was reminded of was the hundreds of dead clones inside of the temple, the ones who died trying to kill the Jedi. Ahsoka soon asked what he was doing here, and Obi-Wan then informed them of his big reveal. Anakin has turned to the dark side. Ahsoka and Rex could not believe it, but as Ahsoka entered the ship, she could feel the darkness surrounding Anakin. So together, the three of them would carry Anakin out to the Mandalorian vault inside of the crashed Venator. Maul was obviously no longer inside of it, and Ahsoka told Obi-Wan that he escaped. The vault survived the crash, and once Anakin was strapped inside, it was activated to float in the air and follow them onto Padme's ship. Rex and Ahsoka decided to go with Obi-Wan. They were still both in shock over Anakin turning to the dark side. Ahsoka was in denial about it, thinking maybe he was possessed, or that Obi-Wan was just wrong. It just didn't make sense. She knew Anakin, right? But as they flew through hyperspace, her denial began to fade, and Obi-Wan was telling her everything. How Anakin raided the temple, killed masters, knights, Padawans, and younglings. Obi-Wan said he would have trouble believing it himself if he didn't fight Anakin, and if he didn't see the holograms in the temple. The two of them fought to the death on Mustafar, but Obi-Wan just couldn't kill him. Both he and Ahsoka had some belief that maybe Anakin would turn back to the light and help them kill Cyas. The Emperor was the real enemy in all of this, they convinced themselves. Once Cyas is gone, Anakin will be back. Both Obi-Wan and Ahsoka were exhausted, both physically and emotionally. So as the ship flew through hyperspace, they both drifted off to sleep on accident. And while the two of them were not even close to ready to kill Anakin at this point, the same could not be said about now Commander Rex. Once the Jedi were sleeping, Rex entered the back room with Anakin in the vault, and he stared at his former commander. Rex was not a Jedi. To him, loyalty was more important than anything. He thought Anakin shared that belief, and yet he was to blame for all of this. Rex remembered the moment that Order 66 took over his mind, and now he could only imagine how the same happened to millions of his brothers. They either died firing at their own commanders, killing their own commanders, or they now have to live inside of their own mind prison, all because Anakin turned to the dark side. Rex was gripping his pistol now. He couldn't stop himself. He held it up to the vault window, right at Anakin's face. With a simple pull of the trigger, Rex thought he could find some clarity, some justice for all of his brothers. He didn't want to talk to Anakin. He knew what he did, and he couldn't stand for it. So Rex aimed, but right as he was about to fire, Anakin opened his eyes, and Rex saw the evil yellow eyes glaring right at him. This distracted Rex, and his hand moved to the left as he fired. Instead of hitting Anakin, Rex hit the latch for the vault door. The door swung open, and in a split second, Anakin was now able to use the Force to rip the door from its hinges, slamming it into the far wall, crushing Rex underneath it. With the door open, Anakin could use the Force, and he unlocked the restraints, now getting to the floor. The last thing he remembered was fighting Obi-Wan on Mustafar, and now he felt nothing but anger, hatred, rage. He had to get out of here and find Padme. In the front of the ship, Ahsoka slowly woke up after thinking she may have heard something inside the ship. She looked to Obi-Wan, deciding to let him sleep, as she curiously walked to the back of the ship, calling out for Rex. And as she entered the back to see the vault door opened, Rex was dead underneath the door. Horror filled her entire body, and as she turned, it was too late. Anakin fired Rex's pistols into her body enough times to kill her instantly, and as she fell dead, Anakin reached down, grabbing her lightsabers. He had no compassion left for anyone keeping him away from Padme. It was time for this to end. In the front of the ship, now Obi-Wan woke up after hearing the blasts that killed Ahsoka, and he stood up with urgency. He was about to exit the cockpit when he heard footsteps coming his way. Obi-Wan hid behind the door, but suddenly the door was kicked down, and a lightsaber was swung at Obi-Wan's head. He barely ignited his own blade in time to deflect it, and he stared into Anakin's Sith eyes as the two of them locked their lightsabers together. Obi-Wan couldn't believe he escaped. It should have been impossible. He knew this ship was en route to Polis Massa. He could not let this version of Anakin find Padme and the children. So Obi-Wan spun off of the lightsaber lock, swinging at Anakin. The two of them exchanged blows until Obi-Wan had an idea. It was a mistake to keep Anakin alive. He saw that now, so he jammed his lightsaber deep into the controls, ducking under a swing from Anakin, disrupting the hyperdrive. The ship was immediately pulled from hyperspace, and both Anakin and Obi-Wan fell to the floor before crashing all around the small room. The ship flew into an asteroid field, causing it to spin out in space, crashing into asteroids, descending down into the snowy moon below them. Neither Anakin or Obi-Wan could balance themselves, and Anakin slammed his head into the ceiling, while a piece of debris hit Obi-Wan. Both of them fell unconscious as the ship slammed into the ground, skidding through the snow until coming to a complete halt on the ground, as everything fell silent. When Obi-Wan eventually woke up, he wasn't sure if it had been minutes, hours, maybe days, but he heard the sounds of raspy breathing and coughing coming from nearby. Obi-Wan slowly stood up, noticing injuries pretty much everywhere on his body, and he looked over to see Anakin sitting on the ground. A piece of the ship pierced Anakin's back and was jutting out of what seemed to be a lung. While unconscious, Anakin was lethally stabbed, and through short breaths, he stared up at Obi-Wan, blood dripping from his mouth. Obi-Wan reached down to try and help, but Anakin stopped him, saying it's far too late. Anakin's blue eyes looked up at Obi-Wan, and he told his old master to kill Sidious. Do not let him find Padme and the children. He coughed again, and Obi-Wan nodded through tears, saying he promises the children will be safe. Anakin nodded slowly, and his head slumped forward as he died here amidst his own destruction. Obi-Wan looked back to Anakin, then through the fiery debris at Rex and Ahsoka, and then he looked inward to himself. He was a fool to ever try and bring Anakin back from Mustafar. Yoda was right. Anakin died in the Jedi Temple after killing the younglings. And now Obi-Wan blamed himself for Ahsoka and Rex dying. He reached down, grabbing Anakin's lightsaber, and he walked over the destroyed ship to start a new life focused on one thing: revenge. Elsewhere in the galaxy, Darth Sidious searched Mustafar for Anakin, but ultimately he could not find him. Either he joined Obi-Wan, died somewhere in the lava, or was somehow captured. Sidious was extremely disappointed in his apprentice, hoping to find him soon, but for now he had to return to Coruscant and truly begin finalizing his empire. He knew Yoda was alive, but he also knew the old Jedi Grand Master would not be returning anytime soon. His own failures are far enough of a burden. He is simply not strong enough to defeat Sidious anymore. The Emperor was content with where things were at, though he wished he had either Anakin or Anakin's children. He would send out clone groups all across the galaxy to search for both Anakin and Padme, while he built up the new empire. On Polis Massa, Padme would give birth as Bail Organa assured her that Obi-Wan was bringing Anakin here shortly. With Padme thinking Anakin was on his way, she was able to push through the birth of the twins and ultimately survive, waiting anxiously for Anakin. She knew there was still good in him. She wanted to help him. But Anakin never came. Holding her two children did give Padme a lot of joy, and she accepted that she would have to go into hiding to keep these children safe from Sidious. Yoda was very disappointed that Obi-Wan never returned. He knew now that something went wrong, but he would never find out exactly what happened, as he went into exile to preserve the Jedi Order for as long as he lived. Bail would return to the Senate, trying to be a good senator while very slowly starting the rebellion. And out in the galaxy, Obi-Wan Kenobi would spend days alone before ending up on Mandalore. Obi-Wan took a public transport here, hiding under his robes, and eventually was able to steal a speeder, heading out into an abandoned corner of the planet where there was still grass plains and wildlife living. Civilization never stretched out this far, and over the next few weeks, Obi-Wan would slowly build himself a home in a nearby cave that he would also begin to use for mining. Obi-Wan came to Mandalore because the planet gave him a sense of calmness as he remembered the woman he loved. Everything could be so different if he just followed his heart and went with Satine. But Obi-Wan was always going to be a Jedi, even if now his sole focus was on destroying one person. Obi-Wan would spend months here, doing nothing except using his lightsaber to cut deep into this hidden cave, searching for Beskar, learning to forge this Beskar into armor with tools he would steal from the main cities. It was a slow process, but one Obi-Wan was determined to complete. Weeks would turn into months, then years, as Obi-Wan would spend every day just mining for more and more Beskar. Some days getting nothing, other days getting enough to just add anything onto his building armor. Until, after 3 years of dedication, Obi Wan Kenobi had made himself a set of silver and blue armor, honoring both the Jedi ways and honoring Satine. Whenever Obi Wan wasn't mining, building the armor, or sleeping, he was training to fight with both his lightsaber and Anakin's saber. He would fight Sidious with 2 blades and Beskar armor, giving himself every possible advantage, and once he put on the full suit for the first time, mastered the art of dual wielding, he was ready. For the first time in years, Obi-Wan left Mandalore with the same mission he had upon arriving: kill Darth Sidious. On Coruscant, Sidious was in his office directing different Imperial officers across the galaxy. He was still reeling a bit from the destruction of Mount Tantus and some of his most advanced cloning experiments, and now he was looking into the Death Star, along with other possible planets to pursue cloning. One of the places he intended to visit first was Exegol, an ancient planet of the Sith. But as Sidious was thinking about all of this, he heard something just outside of his office. He turned to see someone in full Mandalorian armor fly up to his window with a jetpack before blasting it open with the Force. Sidious put his hand up to avoid the glass shards, and the Mandalorian landed on the ledge. Sidious lifted up his hands, blasting lightning from both hands out at this Mandalorian, and he pulled out 2 blue lightsabers to deflect the lightning. As Sidious shot out the lightning, he noticed the 2 sabers belonged to Anakin and Obi Wan. Sidious now stopped his lightning, realizing who this was. Sidious hated Obi Wan. For years, he was the main thorn in his side, preventing Anakin from giving himself to the darkness, and after going to Mustafar and fighting Obi Wan, Anakin disappeared. Sidious was forced to find a new apprentice, and to this day, no one impressed him enough. The Grand Inquisitor was the closest, but Anakin would have been perfect. Sidious felt his anger rise as he told Obi-Wan he will enjoy this kill more than any Jedi before him. Obi-Wan told Sidious he's been waiting for this day for a long time, and he will not fail. Sidious pulled out his own red blade and quickly flipped through the air to kill Kenobi, thrusting his saber towards his chest, but the strike was quickly deflected by Obi-Wan, sending a shower of sparks across the room. Obi-Wan launched his own rapid series of attacks, his left saber arcing high in the air, forcing Sidious to block, while his right blade struck low, aiming for Sidious's legs. The Sith Lord leapt backwards, his agility fueled by the dark side, as he narrowly avoided the deadly blow. The battle raged on through the office, the walls scorched by sabers and lightning, furniture was shattered, the sounds of battle echoed in the office, as Obi-Wan channeled the teachings of his fallen friends, combining the defensive styles and the aggressive styles. His dual sabers created a relentless push, as Sidious was pushed to his own limits. With a new roar, Sidious charged back in with dark power, his movements a red blur of speed. Obi-Wan matched him strike for strike, his 2 lightsabers making a perfect defensive style now. Sidious finally got a strike past the sabers, but Obi-Wan twisted his chest, so the lightsaber only scraped off of his new armor, and he punched Sidious in the face, before using his jetpack to slam him hard into the wall. In a desperate moment, Sidious pushed Obi-Wan away and leapt high into the air, bringing his lightsaber down in a powerful overhead strike. Obi-Wan crossed his 2 blades above his head, catching the red blade between his own. The impact sent a shockwave through the room, but Obi-Wan held strong, and now he suddenly dropped his blades, allowing Sidious to strike across his helmet, then his shoulder, both strikes making a mark but nothing more than that, and this allowed Kenobi to stab one blade deep into Sidious's gut, while using the other to block a final strike of desperation from the Dark Lord. Obi-Wan ripped his saber through Sidious again and again, and the Sith Lord fell dead on the office floor. Obi-Wan put both sabers back on his belt, then grabbed Sidious's red blade and ignited it as the office door finally opened and a group of clones ran in, firing at Obi-Wan. With his face hidden under the helmet, Obi-Wan flew away with the red blade, and the clones came together, concluding that it had to be one of the Inquisitors that did this to the Emperor, as only they are known to use red lightsabers. Obi-Wan would escape the planet and make his way to Alderaan, finding Bail Organa late at night and telling him everything. Bail would thank Obi-Wan and tell him where Padme and the children were hiding. Over the next few weeks, the Empire would begin to crumble as the Inquisitors were framed and many different people were vying for power. The Grand Inquisitor would try to take his place atop the Empire, along with Mas Amedda and many leaders of the army, and it would lead to the Empire beginning a sort of civil war within itself. Obi-Wan would travel to Sorgan, where Padme, Luke, and Leia were hiding. Padme was so happy to see Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan would settle in here as a sort of uncle for the young children, while the Empire ate itself alive. Good senators like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma were able to step in. Padme decided to stay away from politics, instead living out a peaceful life here with Obi Wan and the children. They would not be trained, and instead the Jedi Order would restart many years later as Yoda would find Kanan Jarrus and soon Ezra Bridger, allowing Obi Wan to retire from the Jedi ways after his final mission versus Sidious. And folks, that is where our story ends today. My path or my idea with this was really to do something different than the typical way that Anakin, in these stories, when Anakin leaves Mustafar alive and not burned, or even if he leaves burned, it will often have him just turning back to the light and fighting Sidious. I've done that story. I know Penty's probably done that story. Fantasy folk, we've all done that story, right? So I really wanted to try something different with this. And ultimately that included another fight on the ship, where it goes down and Anakin dies there, with Obi-Wan being kind of a sole survivor and seeing that he's got to just let Anakin go and take a completely different path in his life, just kind of seeking out revenge. And I know that's not the Jedi way, but that's the path that Obi-Wan chooses in this story. Had fun with him going to Mandalore, building his own armor, dual wielding with Anakin and his saber. So hope you guys enjoyed this different path. Hope you didn't expect it. Yeah, hope you liked it, and I'll see you in the next video.